Folks, it is January 8th, and the Blue Jackets are in a playoff spot. We're going to talk about what that means and how likely it is to stick around on today's Locked On Blue Jackets.
You're Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Jay Foster, here to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly about your favorite team and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before we get things started, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day every single day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. Now, for the first time since I don't know when, the Blue Jackets are in a playoff spot. This is the latest they've been in a playoff spot, I think, literally since the 2019-2020 season, which got cut short due to COVID, and was kind of just generally speaking a weird. Well, it was weird for a lot of reasons, but Blue Jackets snuck into the playoffs then. They were not officially in a playoff spot when the season finished, I don't think, but on January 8th, they were at 50 points in 44 games, had a .568 win percentage, which is slightly better than where they are right now, which is they are sitting at, I believe, 18-7-6, which is above NHL 500, and it is good enough for that second wild card spot. So I want to talk about what that means for a little bit, and then I want to talk about the game last night, because on paper, the game doesn't look great, but actually, that was a really great game for a lot of players. So Blue Jackets, 42 points in 41 games. They are 18-17-6. They got a .512 save point percentage, and that was, I believe, only like their second post-regulation win of the season. Like, it feels like they haven't, second or third, I don't know, but like it feels like they've gone to overtime a lot. They've got 14 regulation wins of 18. So they've won. They're 4-6, I believe, in post overtime competitions. However, 3 of those 4 wins have come in the shootout. So like once they make it through overtime, generally they're fine. The overtime got a little bit dicey. We'll talk about that in a minute here. But Blue Jackets currently in a playoff spot. They have the same number of points as the Penguins, but they've played 1 extra game. And then right on their heels are the Ottawa Senators and the Montreal Canadiens, both with 41 points. Ottawa Senators have 2 games in hand over the Blue Jackets. Canadiens have 1 game in hand. And then right behind them, the Red Wings with 40 points, the Flyers with 39, the Rangers with 38, the Islanders with 37, and the Buffalo Sabres with 35. The Buffalo Sabres are dead last in the Eastern Conference and are only 7 points out of a playoff spot. Like, the East is weird this year. And like, if you cut the New York teams just off, the Philadelphia Flyers are 6th in the Metro. They are 4th last in the East. And they are 3 points out of a playoff spot. Once you get out of the wildcard spots, like, it gets a little bit, like, the separation is there a little bit more. So the Capitals have 56, the Devils have 53, the Hurricanes have 50 points. And then next up is in 4th place is the Blue Jackets with 42. So like, there's a little bit of a separation there. The Atlantic is also kind of weird. You've got 56 points for the Leafs, 50 for the Panthers, and then 45 for the Bruins. 4th place over there is Tampa Bay at 44 points. So like, there's a lot of, I imagine the Bruins and Tampa Bay will probably swap around a little bit. But Blue Jackets in a playoff spot in January. Like, they're playing meaningful hockey in the second half of the season, which is not something I was like prepared for this season, really, kind of at all. Like, obviously, when they made the summer moves, I was hopeful that, you know, some guys were going to take steps forward, that some guy, you know, bringing in Monahan was going to help, that we'd see improvement from guys like Sillinger, Johnson, Marchenko, Chinikov, etc. I didn't expect this. And then obviously when Johnny Gaudreau passed away, it made that playoff hope feel a lot farther away. You know, you lose Patrick Laine in a trade. You lose Johnny Gaudreau in this awful, sudden, tragic way. Suddenly, you're looking at having to scramble to even reach the salary cap floor. You know, you end up picking up guys like Kevin LeBanc, like Zach Aston Reese, like James Van Riemsdyk, you know, to just kind of fill roster gaps. In no way did I think that this team was going to be a playoff team, but like at the beginning of the season, I was like, okay, this team, like, kind of, you know, tongue in cheek, I was like, this team is either picking first overall or winning the cup, and there's nothing kind of in between that. And I was kind of being glib about that, but I still do kind of feel that a little bit. All the Blue Jackets have to do for a chance to win the cup is make the playoffs. You know, will they get flattened by probably Washington at this point? I think maybe, you know, or they might end up playing Toronto or Florida. You know, like, it's going to be a tough first round either way, but the fact that the Blue Jackets are here and in the conversation this late in the season, I think, speaks to a lot of things. Speaks to the coaching, for example, who I am really happy to have been wrong about. Like, I wasn't wary of the hiring in as much as I was like, so like when they hired Babcock, I was like, okay, this is not a great hiring. I don't think it fits the team. I don't think, you know, there was a lot of reasons that I didn't like it. Obviously, it came out that everything was very bad, no good, etc. I was wary of the Everson hire. He wasn't my first choice. Talking a little bit to Seth Topal of Locked on Wild about his experience with Dean Everson. My worry was that we were going to get another coach that just relied so heavily on the veterans that the kids weren't going to get a chance to do anything. And Dean Everson has basically blown that out of the water. You know, there are still some choices that he's making that I wouldn't make. I'm still confused by the Fantilli usage, and we'll talk about him in a second here because he's someone that I really want to talk about after last night's game. You know, the Fantilli usage is confusing to me sometimes. I didn't really agree with what was happening with David Jiricek. Obviously, that's all gone and in the past now. And seeing the Matejchuk usage makes me think that it's not that he doesn't trust young defensemen. I think it's that David Jiricek didn't fit the systems and probably wasn't as ready as a lot of fans thought he was, potentially myself including, you know? This is not to say that David Jiricek is not going to end up being a very good player for Minnesota, but I think he's further away than I, at least, thought he was. And it maybe wasn't that he wasn't getting the opportunity, although I do think that, but he's not here anymore. And Matejchuk has kind of jumped basically everyone in the depth chart, I think, which is kind of fun, you know. And we're seeing Damon Severson as a healthy scratch, which is kind of wild to think about. You know, you don't ever like to think about however much money he's making, what, $6.5 million sitting on the bench, or sitting on the press box. But I am genuinely shocked that Everson has made that decision. I think this was his second straight healthy scratch, and then before that they were rolling 7 defensemen. So like, Everson has really, really impressed me this season with his willingness to play the good players, regardless of how old they are, how long they've been in the league, how long they've been with the team, like their reputation, anything like that, you know, which is fun and exciting. And I've really been enjoying it. And so I think Dean Everson is a big reason that the Blue Jackets are in a playoff spot right now. Obviously, you know, you talk about the performance that we're seeing from Kirill Marchenko, performances we're seeing from Zach Werenski, from Sean Monahan. Dante Fabro has been a real kind of revelation for this team because he's given Zach Werenski a consistent and competent defense partner for the first time, I think, since Seth Jones left, you know? We talk about the coming out of Kent Johnson. Cole Sillinger has really lifted his game up. Like, Dmitri Voronkov, I think, is leading all NHL players in goals in the past, like, since, December 1st, I think it is. No one except Leon Draisaitl has scored more goals than Dmitri Voronkov. He's got 9 in his past 8 games or 9 in his past 7 games, something like that. You know, like, obviously they're all not, I was going to say to blame, but they're not to blame for being in a playoff spot. Like, they are reasons the Blue Jackets are in playoff spots, but I think the coaching has really kind of made this team into more than the sum of their parts, which is really, really fun. And it is kind of echoing back to those Tortorella days. Except I think Everson has more to work with than Tortorella ever did. So We love to see that the Blue Jackets are in a playoff spot. We are so, like, I didn't see this coming. I thought they might sneak in at the end of the season. Obviously, a lot of things can change. And by the time I record next, they might not be in a playoff spot anymore because it is so tight in the East. But as of right now, my advice, enjoy this. Like I said at the beginning of the season, when the Blue Jackets were, looking good, when they were scoring 6 goals every other game, I was like, hey, they're playing with house money. Enjoy this. They're still playing with that house money. Enjoy it. Just enjoy the season for what it is. And we'll worry about the playoffs if and when we get there, I do want to talk about last night's game, though. There's a lot that I want to talk about in last night's game. So we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll jump right into beating Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh for the first time in literally a decade. So that's coming up in just a second here at Locked On Blue Jackets. First, I'm going to tell you about FanDuel. From big game upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. It's $200 whether you win or lose. Just go in, find the first bet that you can, put $5 on it, and you're going to get $200 that you can spend on whatever you want. FanDuel has live bets. They've got same-game parlays. They've got so much more. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Once again, get started with $200 in bonus bets when you play your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. We're talking about how big a game this was, because the Blue Jackets winning this game was important for a lot of reasons. Number one, winning in Pittsburgh is something they hadn't done since Obama was president. I believe it was November 2015 was the last time the Blue Jackets won in Pittsburgh in the regular season. I believe they had a playoff win since then, or maybe 2 playoff wins, but that was the first time they'd won in the regular season in Pittsburgh since 2015. They've beaten the Penguins a couple of times since then, like obviously earlier this season. Last season they had a win. I think the season before that they had a win as well. But like winning in Pittsburgh really feels like it's not quite the same as when the Capitals and Alex Ovechkin finally won their Stanley Cup, they made it through Pittsburgh as a playoff round, which is something they hadn't done. And it really felt like they were like, oh, well, if we've finally beaten Pittsburgh in the playoffs, then we can do whatever we want. And they did go on to win the cup. And I don't think it's quite like that, but this does feel like a David and Goliath moment, of I hate so much when Pittsburgh says it's big brother, little brother. It has been a little bit. And watching the Blue Jackets kind of do this while the Penguins do this has been fun and entertaining. They're kind of meeting in the middle at the minute, but obviously the Blue Jackets are young and are only going to get better, whereas the Pittsburgh Penguins are kind of on the twilight of their championship window. Or Sidney Crosby's still going to do Sidney Crosby things, and he was in full bloom last night, just doing insane, ridiculous things. But Blue Jackets beating Pittsburgh is always great. Beating them in Pittsburgh is even better. They flip-flop position in the standings as well. So Pittsburgh was at 41 points. The Blue Jackets were at 40 points. Now they're both at 42, but because the Blue Jackets have played one fewer game, they have jumped them in the standings. They have a better winning record. They are at a 5-12 point percentage, 18-17 and 6 versus the Penguins 17-17 and 8. If the Penguins had won this game, they would be sitting on 43 points. The Blue Jackets would be sitting on either 40 or 41 points, depending on whether it went to overtime/shootout or not, which brings me to my next point about this game, which is, and this is on me a little bit. The Penguins scored to make it 2-1, I think 30-45 seconds into the third period. And in my head, I was like, well, that feels like game over. I didn't say anything because I didn't want to jinx it, but I felt like what was going to happen was Tristan Jarry was going to continue to stand on his head, and the Penguins would score the inevitable empty net goal, make it 3-1, and the curse would continue. Pittsburgh made it 3-1, I think with 10 minutes left in the third period, and that, I think, was what I tweeted, man, that's probably going to be game. I don't think the Blue Jackets are going to score 2 or more goals in this period. Cole Sillinger probably won't do what he did then again. Just a real blue screen brain moment for him in an otherwise very good game, I will say. But that to me felt like game over. And the Blue Jackets made me look real stupid. Dmitri Voronkov scores again. Again, just a complete, like a monster performance from him. That's his 16th goal of the season, which I believe ties his career high. That was his 17th goal of the season. His career high actually was 18, which he had in 75 games last season. So he's one away from a career high. You love to see it. And then everyone is stressed because there's no Sean Monahan in the third period. However, Adam Fantilli, who I do want to talk about in a little bit more detail later on, takes the Monahan position both at even strength and on the power play. Scores just that pass from Kent Johnson, I'm going to be thinking about forever. And I don't know why they don't glue those two together because they work so well together. I know that they like Kent Johnson with Sillinger. Kent Johnson and Fantilli just, I don't know. I want the Kent Johnson, Adam Fantilli, Gavin Brindley line, and I want it like now, you know? However, Adam Fantilli scores. That would be their second power play goal of the night, which is exciting. The power play continues to do things. They had a 100% success rate. They also had a 100% failure rate on the penalty kill, but that's beside the point here. Blue Jackets tie it up with like 3.5 minutes to go on the power play. That's a goal and an assist for Adam Fantilli. That's 2 assists for Kirill Marchenko. That's 2 goals for Dmitri Voronkov. So clutch. Overtime was kind of a nightmare, honestly. And we're not gonna rehash the entire game because you guys watched the game or you watched the highlights. You know what happened. Overtime was an abject disaster for everyone on the Blue Jackets not named Elvis Merzlikins. They got pinned into their own zone, I think, for the last 2.5 minutes. Dante Fabro, Dante Matejchuk got stuck defending fully for the last 2 minutes of overtime, which is not great. Elvis was excellent. There was an incredible save on Crosby in like a minute and a half into overtime. Elvis's stats didn't look great for this game. 3 goals on 23 shots, I think, but he was excellent in overtime. He was great in the shootout as well. And the Blue Jackets managed to pick up an important win against someone who is right next to them in the standings, and B, they finally get to put that curse to bed. Now they've done it. They've proven they can win. They've proven that they can beat Pittsburgh in their own barn. They've proven they can beat Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh. What can they do now? You know, it feels like every other game after this, I'm like, yeah, why not? Let's blow the Leafs out of the building. Let's destroy the Golden Knights. Let's have fun with it, you know? We'll see what happens next. But a couple of performances I want to talk about. One of which is Adam Fantilli. We're going to do that in just a second here on Locked On Blue Jackets. First, I've got to tell you about Game Time, because I love last-minute tickets to sports events. For example, I love to go to Sharks games last minute. You know this about me. But whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy, everywhere I need a ticket to get in, I go to Game Time. And Game Time has made it even easier to get tickets for my favorite events with their new feature, Game Time Picks. This feature filters out the fluff to only show you incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Game Time, like I said, it's the only thing that I use to buy Sharks tickets, because those are the things that I buy the most often. But I was in London recently, and I used them to buy some tickets to a West End show, which was a lot of fun, and it was also way cheaper than going direct from the theater or using one of those weird little ticket booths that they have in London and New York. So Game Time, you love to see it. It's great. They've got all-in pricing, which shows the total cost up front. There's no surprise fees at checkout like some other ticketing services. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. I want to talk about Adam Fantilli. I also want to talk a little bit about Sean Monahan, who missed the third period due to an upper body injury. He was seen after the game with a wrist brace on, which is not great news, but I thought he was going to be concussed, quite frankly. There was a hit like halfway through the second period. I think he got kind of crunched into the boards by, I want to say, Noel Achari, who I honestly didn't know was still playing in the National Hockey League, but that's beside the point. Didn't look great. It looked like it winded him a little bit, and I wonder if that's when his wrist got jammed up. No update last night. Obviously, there'll probably be an update later today on like the time he's going to miss, but he was looking like he was moving kind of gingerly in the post-game celebration when he handed the donkey hat over. That's tough. That's bad news. If the Blue Jackets are missing Sean Monahan for any length of time, things are going to get real interesting because he has been their number one center. He has been genuinely excellent for this team. 41 points in 41 games, continues to be a point per game. He got an assist last night against Pittsburgh before leaving the game on that opening power play goal by Dmitri Voronkov, and just has been an incredible force for this team in terms of leadership, in terms of like being a good example for the young guys. Like, I think, again, I've talked about it at length. We're not going to go into it again, but like with the Gaudreau tragedy, this was the best place for him to be because it allowed him to be around people who also knew Johnny, and, you know, they could kind of grieve together. And he's talked very kind of candidly about that and how tough it was at the beginning of the season. But it's so great to see him succeed. It's so great to see him like smiling on the ice and having fun. He's really hit it off with specifically Marchenko, Voronkov as well, like that top line. If he's missing for any amount of time, it feels like it's going to get a little bit dicey for the Blue Jackets. However, good news, Adam Fantilli got elevated into that 1C position when Monahan didn't finish the third period, played between Marchenko and Voronkov, and was an absolute monster there. He was excellent in that third period, which reinforces that what I've been thinking all season, which is that his sophomore slump, quote unquote, is because they haven't figured out the right line mates for him. He was dominant in that third period, scored the tying goal, played big minutes, again, looked great between Voronkov and Marchenko. You can tell that, and this kind of goes back to the Monahan thing, is I wonder how much of it is him watching Monahan play and being like, right, okay, well, if this situation happens, then Monahan is here. So if I'm in that situation, I will go to there, you know? And A+, 10 out of 10, top marks for Adam Fantilli in that third period, which makes me think if they do have to miss Sean Monahan for any amount of time, you just plug Adam Fantilli in there and you just go, you know? You don't miss a beat. Like, again, he was, I can't speak highly enough of his third period. I thought he was great. And like, he's looked good and hasn't been putting up the points necessarily, but you know, he's been learning, he's been refining, he's been playing defense a lot more kind of down on that third line, second/third line, depending on which way you want to put it, whether he or Sillinger is the 3C on this team right now. And he's clearly put all of that into effect and really, really shone last night. I thought had 3 shots on goal, a goal and an assist, played 19-14 time on ice. Face-offs not where you need it to be yet, but Sidney Crosby is the best face-off man in the league. Like, statistically speaking, he's the leader in face-off wins in NHL history. Like, he's won more face-offs than anyone else since they started recording stats for that. So, like, and Fantilli took a bunch of face-offs against him. I'm not surprised that he lost, you know? But this is good news for the Blue Jackets. Obviously, if Sean Monahan misses any amount of time, that's tough. Getting Adam Fantilli between an elite winger like Marchenko and Dmitri Voronkov, who might be like the best third dude on a line in the entire NHL, in terms of just like taking advantage of his line mate, not taking advantage, but like Dmitri Voronkov, with the Monahan, Marchenko, Voronkov line, Voronkov is clearly the third dude on that line, and he has made that work for him. He's one of the best net front guys in the league. He is the king of just kind of taking advantage of being in the right place at the right time. He's really found a way to make up for his skating, which, he's never going to be the fastest dude in the world. He's never going to be the most graceful dude in the world, but he's made it work for him, which is really, really great to see. So this is no shade to Voronkov when I'm saying that you have an elite winger in Marchenko and then a dude in Voronkov that has really kind of taken advantage of his top line minutes and is running with it. Because that's how you become elite, is you put yourself in a situation and then you excel in that situation. And Voronkov is excelling in the situation he's in right now. Put Fantilli between those two guys, and I think you're going to see a really, really elevated version of Fantilli, which is exactly what I think the Blue Jackets were hoping. The long-term plan was never to have Sean Monahan as your 1C for those 4-5 years, You got Sean Monahan, well, A, to play with Johnny Gaudreau, and B, for the young guys to learn from. And when you look at the way that Adam Fantilli and Cole Sillinger have grown this season, they're learning from him, And I don't want Sean Monahan to miss time. You don't mess with a good thing. That top line has really been working, but if, knock on wood, they do miss Sean Monahan, Adam Fantilli is there and he's ready to step in, and I think that we're going to be really, really excited by what we see from Adam Fantilli because he's starting to heat up. I think he's got 4 points in his last 3 games, guys. Watch out for Adam Fantilli. He's going to pop, and I think it's going to be soon. That's kind of all I've got for today. Tomorrow, we are going to preview the next game, which I believe is against... Do I know who it's against? I don't. It's against the Seattle Kraken. Seattle Kraken are in town on tomorrow. So we'll preview that. We'll take a look at how the Kraken are doing. We'll look at the last time these two teams played against each other, which was not a great game for the Blue Jackets. Hopefully they can fix that. But that's coming up tomorrow. Thank you for listening to this episode, for making it your first listen of the day every single day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms, on YouTube. And I appreciate you coming to hang out. You can find me on Twitter at _Jacob Foster, JAKOBFORSTER. You can find me on Blue Sky without the underscore. You can find the show at LO_Blue Jackets on Twitter. Blue Sky is coming, we promise. If you have comments, questions, criticisms, email me at lockedonbluejackets@gmail.com. And until tomorrow, make sure you stay locked on.